welcome to this space. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation in order to talk about innovation, because we are very passionate about this topic. So we know you are one of the great experts in innovation. You have studied this subject a lot, and now you apply it actually in big companies around the world. So thank you so much for being here to talk about this topic, which is everybody is fond of it, and we want to understand it in order to apply it in the company. So, okay, let's start to talk about why innovation is not R&D. Yes, because we sometimes misunderstood innovation with just only doing R&D. So let's talk about you. You often say that R&D exactly is not a reliable indicator of innovation. So can you just unpack and tell us a little bit more about this idea?
Yeah, Paula, listen, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me on the show. Indeed, I've worked in innovation for several years. And I think at one point, working in innovation, I realized that we need to make a distinction between invention and innovation. And invention is basically the result of R&D, to be honest with you. We put people in buildings and we have them create new ideas. Those ideas can be simply new ideas, or they can be new results of a certain product, or it can be a certain mix of ingredients if we're talking about a pharma, or if we're talking about a life sciences or a chemical company. They create something, they invent something new. However, it also requires for the company to be able to commercialize that was created. So it's not just creating, right? It's very easy to create. The most difficult part, obviously, I'm not going to say it's super easy to create new stuff, but let's say we're kind of good at that. But what's really difficult is to commercialize what has been created, and that's the distinction that organizations need to make between R&D and innovation. And I have a story to share, actually, and I think this is very enlightening for what I just said. I don't know if you know, or people that are listening to the show know, how the mouse was created. The computer mouse. Yes. We're using it every day, and probably the touch screens that we're now using and replacing the mouse are probably an iteration of the computer mouse, if you want. But still, the computer mouse is literally everywhere. Now, that was actually created by Xerox in the Palo Alto Research Center. Okay. Palo Alto Research Center means their R&D department. So back in the 70s, late 70s, beginning 80s, Xerox had this Palo Alto Research Center. A lot of smart people with lab coats close to the San Francisco Bay Area, designing new things, inventing new things. One of the things that they created was a box that had the ability to move a cursor, and that cursor would move a pointer on a screen. That was their invention. And that invention was literally gathering dust. Apparently, legend has it, it was gathering dust in the lab for a lot of years. And at one point, Palo Alto Research Center, Xerox, had an open door event. They invited people from the computer clubs. They invited computer enthusiasts from the Bay Area to come and see what they were working on. One of the people that went on that trip was Steve Jobs back in the late 70s. Okay. And he found this invention there. He was talking with the researchers in Xerox and asking them, hey, what are your plans with this box? Because this is amazing. And they basically nodded. They said, we don't know. We just created it. It's an invention. It was just here. And Steve Jobs offered to buy the IP for that from Xerox. And they bought the IP. Legend has it for $130 or $135. And when Mac released a few years later, it was the first personal computer that had a mouse with which you can actually interact with the computer. So again, this is an example that shows that there's a big distinction between invention and R&D and commercializing that particular invention and R&D, the innovation side. And even today, if you look at companies like Tesla, a lot of the stuff that they put in their car is R&D that they haven't actually created. They purchased IP from research centers, from other companies, from companies that only do research, and they created the product. They innovated on the product called car. So again, this is a story as old as time, right? Starting from the 70s, and most organizations need to start making the distinction that, look, if we're spending money on R&D, it doesn't automatically mean that we're going to be successful in the market, because somebody also needs to commercialize those ideas, and that's the job of the innovation department.
Yeah, terrific. Well, I didn't know the details about the story, so that's great. Yes, of course, it's a beautiful example of why innovation is not just only R&D, no? So actually, this is very brave for you to challenge like this traditional view, no, of that equates R&D with innovation, no? So what did you inspire to challenge this traditional view? And yes, why did a lot of corporations just struggle to innovate despite these massive budgets of R&D?
Yeah, listen, I'm not getting a lot of friends in pharma companies or in chemical companies, because I go there and I challenge this notion. And in particular, in pharma, they view R&D and innovation as being synonyms. I'm not saying there is no overlap. Obviously, there is overlap, right? We're dealing with new things, but there is definitely this distinction I just mentioned. Now, I don't think that there is one certain thing that motivated me to challenge this. It's just that I've been seeing it a lot through the work that I was doing. The fact that organizations were struggling to see ROI from their R&D investment, and not seeing ROI from R&D investments, it means that you are not innovating. You're not able to commercialize that IP that you created. Now, the reasons for that, I think they are countless, and I think every single organization might struggle from a different reason. However, from my work and the organizations that I worked with and the experience that I had, I've seen some patterns, and I think one of the main things is around the governance that we put in place. We put a certain governance in place that is great for creating ideas, R&D, and that works well. And we are kind of like importing the same governance over the innovation side. So we're not making a shift between R&D and innovation. We work with R&D frameworks very, very well, to a point where we create an idea. And then after the idea is created and we want to commercialize it, we either use the same R&D framework, or we're using the framework from the core business, because those are the two frameworks that we have as our disposal in most organizations, right? It's the core business that we know how to operate, and we've been operating for 100 years, and the R&D side. However, there's this third system, this third governance system, if you want, that sits in between R&D and core business, that has only one job: moving things from 0 to 1. Moving things from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 to 10, that's the job of the core business. But moving things from 0 to 1, making sure that that invention moves from having 0 clients to having 1 client, that's the job of innovation. And literally anybody that's been in entrepreneurship can tell you that the most difficult client to land is the first client.
Yes.
Going from client 1 to client 2 to client 3 to client 10, I'm not saying it's not difficult, but we are probably more equipped through MBA trainings, through existing literature, how to do that. What we don't know how to do very well is moving things from 0 to 1, from no clients, just an invention, to customer 1. That's the most difficult part, and that's the job of innovation departments. How do they do it? with experimentation, with design thinking, with all these methodologies that are designed to get us from an idea or an invention to a product in the market that has one customer. One customer is exponentially more than moving from one customer to two customers. It might look linear if you put it on the scale, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, but it's not. 0 to 1, it's a longer jump than 1 to 2.
Oof, totally. I love that metric,
100%.
actually. 0 to 1 is perfect. Actually, yes. And I want to move actually to your book, Innovation Accounting, because that's a really very good tool, actually, that we can use to understand how actually we can measure the success of innovation in our companies, no? And yeah, we sometimes misunderstood how to measure actually and which metrics we can use in corporate innovation today. So what can you tell you about us? You already gave us 1, 0 to 1, so that I love that one. And yes, which others?
In the book, we're talking about many KPIs, right? We're talking about an entire innovation accounting system of KPIs and metrics that interact, and how you should approach innovation measurement, and the fact that you have to have a certain governance framework in place to be able to measure. But what's important to understand, right, if you don't want to dive into the 300 pages of the book, what's important to understand are a couple of things. First and foremost, the fact that you should never use the core business KPIs or success indicators for innovation, because you will always going to be disappointed. Always going to be disappointed. And if you're using them even further to compare to things, always the new ideas are going to lose to the core business. If you are starting a project in our company today, and I've been running a project or a product for, let's say, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, if we compare on paper with the same KPIs, your performance versus my performance, your product will never be able to compete with mine. You don't have traction, you don't have customers, your customer acquisition cost is through the roof. Every financial metric that I can report on, and it looks good on my balance sheet, is going to be terrible for you. You're not going to be able to report that. So if as our CFO compares our product, he or she will always favor my product over your product. Just for the simple fact that I can report stuff. So innovation accounting, it's basically leveling the playing field. It's offering some metrics to the CFO that she can use to look at your product and say, look, Paula, I think your product is doing quite well. There's a lot of reason why the organization should continue investing in the innovation department and your product in particular, because there is potential upside in the future. And I'm not talking about make up numbers, right? Look, go and create a business case and all numbers point up and to the right and all the graphs look nice, but it's all made up. I'm not talking about that, because those are easy to do, easy to fix. I'm talking about actionable metrics. Things like, for example, how fast is your team learning? How has my confidence as a decision maker shifted in your business from one meeting to another, which is basically an indicator of your team de-risking the business. So there's a bunch of indicators that can be used in order to track if new ideas have potential for success and potential for ROI later on. We are not advocating removing the idea of ROI from innovation. We're not saying that. It's very important. Innovation needs to contribute to the growth of the company. But asking that question might actually kill the idea if you're asking it too early. So it's about asking the right question at the right time. ROI question, great. But wait wait a bit, wait 1 quarter, wait 2 quarters, wait 3 years. I mean, most startups don't make any return for the first 3 to 5 years. Why are we asking our products in corporations to make that journey faster? They can't. So we need to shift our framework, if you want, to asking the questions that those ideas can report on.
Exactly. Totally. So actually, yes, metrics has to be they had to be thought depending the company, right? It's like you cannot apply the same rules to all the companies. It has to be well fitted, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a metric that is so hard, like to keep looking at that, because experimentation, we know, is a very big and important part of the whole innovation process. But how can you track it? How can you measure it correctly? It's like you need to fail a lot. You don't need. How do you measure actually this part of the process, which is experimentation?
Yeah, experimentation is I think the number one task of any innovation team. As I said, you have an invention, you created something new. It might be a simple idea, or it might be a compound that you spend 5 years to research. Now you need to do experimentation on that. How do we bring it to market? What revenue model works? What pricing model works? Whatever other component of the business model do we need to have in place for that to succeed in the market, to succeed by being commercialized? So experimentation is something that innovation teams do day one, and they actually don't stop doing it until probably reach product market fit, and actually beyond. I mean, even core business needs to do experimentation. Indeed, it's an activity that's super important. I think that we should take a step back as we're trying to answer that question. We should take a step back and try to understand why do we want to experiment? What's the purpose of experimenting? And the purpose of experimenting is de-risking the business. This is why, or de-risking the idea. This is why we experiment. Because if we would have known already what works, there would be no need for experimentation, and we would just go ahead and do it. We would invest a lot and we would just do it. But the purpose of experimentation is to try small things, see which one works, because we want to de-risk our ideas of success. We want to de-risk our pricing model. We want to de-risk our customer acquisition channel or our partner acquisition channel, whatever it is, we want to de-risk. So the end goal of experimentation is de-risking, right? We can put a metric on de-risking. And in my personal opinion, the only one metric we can boil everything down to is confidence. How confident are we in this idea or in a certain component of this idea? And that confidence can shift through experimentation. Now, that confidence measure can be something that the team proposes, right? This is how confident we are in this particular revenue stream, or it's something that decision makers can look at and they can vote on confidence. They can say, look, in the light of everything that you guys have presented from the innovation team, this is how confident we are at this moment in time with respect to the future success of your idea. It doesn't mean that we don't like your idea or we don't trust it, but this is how confident we are. And that confidence will impact our investment in the idea. If we're highly confident, we will invest more. Or if we're less confident, we're going to invest less or ask the team to do more experimentation. This is how venture capital works. If a VC investor is highly confident in an idea, the valuation that the startup gets is going to be a really good valuation. They're going to sell 1% of the company for $10 million. If the VCs are not confident in that idea, meaning there's still a lot of risk there, the idea is really starting up, you're going to see a worse valuation, meaning that you might sell 25% of your company for $500,000. It's exactly how it works. So confidence is basically a measure of risk, and it can be influenced by experimenting. So if you are experimenting and you show data, the confidence that you have and other people have in your idea or in your business, it's going to increase. In the startup world, this translates to a better financing deal, a better investment round. In the corporate innovation world, this translates to you accessing more resources or accessing further investments or accessing better funding.
Totally. That's just amazing. Yes, because this is a way in which you can like understand how the future could look like. No, it's like and to take actually the right decisions around the process, and for CEOs saying I'm going for this one, the other one.
You can listen. You can measure how many experiments a team is doing. I've been doing that. I mean, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me the same question, I would have said, "Hey, measure experiment velocity of a team."
Yeah.
But I think that's a vanity metric, in my opinion, because teams can actually game that metric. They can come in and they can say every single thing that they've done is an experiment, just to claim that they've done 1,000 experiments in one day or in 1 week. But we should ask ourselves, why do we experiment, right? Going back to what I just said earlier, what's the purpose of experimenting? Well, the purpose of experimenting is learning. Yes, you can measure learning velocity, but even that metric can be biased. What cannot be biased, or can be biased, but it's going to be a bit harder to do, it's going to be confidence. Confidence, yes, I'm a bit more positive about stuff in life. Yes, you can convince me with just one experiment that things are going to be really rosy in the future. But still, confidence is a better is a superior metric to learning velocity or to experiment velocity. You can measure experiment velocity, you can measure learning velocity, but in my opinion, they are not actionable and they're very easy to bias. Bear in mind, we're talking about the learning velocity and experiment velocity in the book, Innovation Accounting book. But now with practice, I'm not advocating for those metrics as being the most interesting one. I advocate for the idea of competence and measuring holistic competence in the business as being a superior metric if we want to know, if we want to invest in team A or team B. If we're being faced with two ideas and we only have money for one, as a CFO, I need to look at the confidence. How confident am I that investment B is better than investment A? And what's going to skew my opinion? The ability for the team to tell me that they ran experiments and they validated or invalidated parts of their business model. That's how it works.
Okay. Yes. Perfect. So, well, in order to wrap up a little bit all the things we've talked about and not to steal that much time of you, could you, if you could redesign how companies approach innovation from scratch, if the company was new and we want to approach innovation for that company, what would be your first move?
Yeah, I think there's going to be only one move, to be honest. I don't think there's multiple moves. I think organizations, regardless of industry, regardless of industry and size. I mean, after you reach a certain size, you need to start thinking about, an innovation system. That's basically the only thing organizations do. They need to create a system for innovation, because at the moment they are just using the system that is designed to extract value from existing businesses. It's not a system designed to create new business for the organization. So they need to create a system for development of new ideas, I should probably say. A system that is able to churn new ideas with regular cadence and with predictability. More than anything, predictability. Why? Because I honestly believe any single company in the world, it doesn't matter where they're from, it doesn't matter the industry they're in, it doesn't matter how big they are, if they set their goals to build a new product, and that's the focus of the organization, they will succeed. Given enough support from management, they will succeed. My question for most companies and most leaders in organizations is, how do you make that into a repeatable process? How do you make sure that next quarter there's going to be another great idea that's being launched, and the quarter after that, and in Q4 in 3 years from now? That is the question. And for that, you need to have a system that works independent of who's in charge at board level, a system that works independent of who's the CFO and the ambition of that CFO for their current tenure. That system is designed around having a good innovation strategy, good practice, innovation governance. That's part of like having the processes and the metrics and how do we measure stuff, culture, and leadership. And if you design a system with these 5 blocks, and these 5 blocks are well integrated and equally developed and equally mature, then you would be able as an organization to do 2 things: churn out great ideas on a constant basis, and above all, be more predictable in terms of result that you're getting from innovation. And I think this is key, because a lot of times CFOs in particular don't want to invest in innovation because there's this element of unpredictability there. We don't know what's going to happen if we invest. But if you have a good system in place with metrics and governance and strategy, then you will be able to predict to a certain extent what will be the outcomes. You can say, look, I have $10 to invest. Do I put it in the core business and it's going to offer me 15% return? Because that's usually what the core business gives us. Or do I put it in innovation and I know with a certain predictability that I will be getting $20, so I'm going to double my amount, but I need to wait, 3 years maybe for that. So again, I have predictability versus what's happening now. I know that I'm putting $10 into core business and I'm getting 15%, or I'm taking this $10, putting it in innovation, and I don't know what's going to happen with that, if I'll ever see it again or whatever's happening with it. And this is why a lot of CFOs, when asked, they take that $10 to the core business. And honestly, me, you, and any other sane person would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that the CFOs are bad people and don't want to invest in innovation. But if we would be those CFOs and we would be facing those decisions, we would take the same decision.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is a black box that it's extremely risky and it has a lot of degree of uncertainty. The job of somebody that's head of innovation, director of innovation, or even the board is to make that box more transparent, make that box more predictable. How do you do it? That innovation system I just mentioned. Strategy, practice, governance, culture, and leadership, all integrated, all able to churn out ideas on a constant basis with a certain degree of predictability. It's not going to be 100% predictable, but let's face it, the core business isn't 100% predictable either. So let's not kid ourselves. Like, look what's happening in the world today. Look where we were a year ago, or 6 months ago, or 2 years ago, right? The core business is not predictable, or at least it's not as predictable as it used to be maybe 10 years ago. But obviously, there is still a gap between the predictability in the core business and the predictability of the innovation. And our job as professional innovators is to increase the predictability of innovation.
For sure. That's a tough job, but great 100%. Job. Yes. Okay, for sure. System, governance, that's the key. That's the perfect, you nailed it. Okay, so Dan, thank you so much for this space, for talking about all these topics within innovation. Hopefully we will have another one once you go to Colombia, and we keep talking about this, innovation, how to apply it to companies, because we know companies need innovation, no, in order to survive, to grow. And so this is important to people to know it, how to work with innovation and use it in their companies.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Looking forward to, coming there in person and maybe meeting some of the students and some of the staff in person.
Yeah.
Again, thank you very much for the time.
Oh, to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.